There are moments in Hollywood history that stopped the world cold, moments so devastating, so blindsiding, that even the most hardened fans are left speechless. And when it comes to John Travolta, one of the most beloved entertainers to ever grace a stage, a screen, or a dance floor, what this man has endured over 7 decades of life is nothing short of unbelievable. At 71 years old, the man who once made the entire world fall in love with him has carried a weight of tragedy so profound, so relentless, that it will leave you completely shattered. This is not just the story of a Hollywood star. This is the story of a man who has lost everything again and again, and somehow, impossibly, kept standing. Stay with us, because what really happened to John Travolta will change the way you see him forever. Long before he became a cultural icon, before the white suits and the dance floors and the thundering applause of millions, John Joseph Travolta was just a boy from Englewood, New Jersey, the youngest of 6 children in a family that breathed theater like oxygen. His mother, Helen, was an actress and singer turned drama teacher, and from the very first moment young Johnny watched her command a room, something ignited inside him, a magnetic, undeniable force that would define every single moment of his life to come. He dropped out of high school at just 16 years old, not out of laziness, not out of rebellion, but out of a hunger so fierce, so consuming, that the classroom simply could not contain it. He crossed the Hudson River into Manhattan with little more than a dream, and an impossible amount of courage, and within months, he was on Broadway. The boy from New Jersey had become something extraordinary. But here is the thing nobody tells you about extraordinary. It does not protect you from heartbreak. Join us as we take you through the real, raw, devastating truth of what John Travolta has lived through and why, at 71, his tragedy is beyond heartbreaking. The audition that changed everything happened not on a traditional stage, but in the humble beginnings of a theatrical world that would eventually launch him into the stratosphere. Travolta's early years were a masterclass in relentless pursuit. He started in summer stock productions, touring companies, and small off-Broadway roles, scraping by on pennies and burning with a passion that refused to be extinguished. He joined the Broadway cast of Grease as a replacement, playing the role of Duty, and then landed a spot in the original cast of the 1974 musical Over Here, starring the legendary Andrews sisters. Every single night on that stage, he gave everything he had. And then Hollywood came calling. His first television role was almost laughably small, a single scene as a fall victim in the show Emergency. But Travolta understood something most aspiring actors never grasp. Every role, no matter how tiny, was a stepping stone. He showed up. He was present. He was magnetic. And in 1975, when he landed the role of Vinnie Barbarino in the ABC sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter, the entire country stopped and took notice. The cocky, charming sweetheart with the Brooklyn accent and the devastating smile became an overnight sensation, a teenage heartthrob that defined an entire generation. The audience reaction was thunderous. Fans flooded the networks with mail. Magazines plastered his face on every cover. And America collectively fell in love with John Travolta. But the journey was far from over, because behind the dazzling smile and the sold-out arenas of fame, John Travolta was quietly beginning to absorb losses that no amount of stardom could shield him from. It started with Diana Hyland, when Travolta was cast alongside her in the 1976 television film The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. He was just 22 years old, and she was 40. She played his mother on screen, but off-screen, the two fell deeply, irrevocably in love. Travolta has spoken openly about her, saying it with a rawness that still echoes decades later, that she was the first person he had ever truly loved. They planned a future together. They picked out a home. They spoke of marriage. And then, in 1977, while Travolta was in the midst of filming Saturday Night Fever, the very movie that would catapult him to international superstardom, Diana Hyland was diagnosed with breast cancer. He flew home to be at her side. He held her hand through the final days, and she died in his arms at the age of 41. Travolta was 23. The man who had just become the most famous young actor on the planet was quietly, privately, devastatingly broken. But he did not break publicly. He did not crumble on red carpets or disappear from the spotlight. He absorbed the grief, and he kept going. Because that is who John Travolta has always been. A man who refuses to let the darkness win. And win, the darkness tried, over and over again. After the meteoric rise of Saturday Night Fever and Grease, Travolta's career entered a brutal, humiliating slump throughout the 1980s. Film after film underperformed. Critics turned their backs. The offers dried up. He was offered roles that would become legendary: American Gigolo, An Officer and a Gentleman, Splash, and he turned them down, each one going on to make other actors famous. Hollywood, the very machine that had built him up, now seemed determined to tear him down. There were days when Travolta genuinely considered leaving acting entirely and becoming a full-time commercial pilot. The man who had once commanded every room he entered was beginning to feel invisible. And then came 1994. Then came Quentin Tarantino. Then came Pulp Fiction. The story of how Travolta landed the role of Vincent Vega is one of Hollywood's greatest legends. Tarantino, who had idolized Travolta growing up, invited him over one evening, not to audition, but simply to spend time together. The two played board games based on Travolta's old movies. They talked for hours. By the end of that surreal night, Tarantino handed him two scripts. One was From Dusk Till Dawn. The other was Pulp Fiction. Travolta's eyes locked onto the second one immediately. A week later, the role was his. When Pulp Fiction hit theaters, it did not just revive Travolta's career, it resurrected it. The film earned over $100 million at the box office, won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, and earned Travolta his second Academy Award nomination. Critics who had written him off were now calling it one of the greatest comebacks in cinematic history. Travolta held this experience in what he called one of the most special places, because it proved something the world had tried to make him forget, that his talent was undeniable, unkillable, eternal. The performances that followed were stunning in their range. Get Shorty earned him a Golden Globe. Face Off showcased his action credentials. Primary Colors proved his dramatic depth. Hairspray in 2007 brought him full circle back to musical theater. And his transformation into Edna Turnblad was nothing short of breathtaking. But through all of this extraordinary professional triumph, the personal tragedies kept coming, quietly, relentlessly, without mercy. In 1991, Travolta married the love of his life, actress Kelly Preston. The two had first met on the set of The Experts in 1989, and what blossomed between them was a love story for the ages, built on mutual respect, shared faith, and a bond that would last nearly 3 decades. Together, they welcomed 3 children: Jet, born in 1992, Ella Blue, born in 2000, and Benjamin, born in 2010. Their family was everything. Their family was the center of the universe, and then the universe took it apart. Jet Travolta was diagnosed with Kawasaki disease as a young child, a condition that causes inflammation in the blood vessels and can have devastating long-term effects. He also lived with autism and a history of seizures, struggles that the family kept deeply private for years. On January 1, 2009, while the family was on vacation in the Bahamas, 16-year-old Jet suffered a seizure. He fell. He struck his head on the edge of a bathtub, and by the time paramedics arrived, John Travolta had already performed CPR on his own son. Desperately, frantically, willing life back into a body that was already slipping away. Jet was gone. He was 16 years old. The grief that followed was so immense, so all-consuming, that it defied description. Travolta and Preston released a statement that said simply, "We are heartbroken that our time with him was so brief." In the months and years that followed, Travolta founded the Jet Travolta Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to assisting children with vision, hearing, mobility, communication, and learning impairments, as well as providing grief counseling to families navigating tragedy. It was an act of love made permanent, an act of survival made purposeful. But the tragedy did not stop there. It never stops for John Travolta. On July 12, 2020, after a secret 2-year battle with breast cancer, a disease that had already claimed Diana Hyland before him, Kelly Preston passed away at the age of 57. Travolta announced her death on Instagram with words that stopped the internet in its tracks. He wrote that she had fought a courageous fight with the love and support of so many, and that he would be taking some time to be there for my children, who have lost their mother. The outpouring of grief from fans, fellow actors, and the entire world was staggering. And then, in 2022, another piece of his heart was ripped away when his lifelong friend and Grease co-star Olivia Newton-John succumbed to breast cancer as well. Travolta's tribute to her was raw and aching. "My dearest Olivia," he wrote, "you made all of our lives so much better. I love you so much." He signed it simply, "You're Danny, you're John." Today, at 71 years old, John Travolta is still here, still standing, still moving forward with a quiet, stubborn grace that has defined him since the day he first stepped onto a stage. His daughter Ella Blue has grown into a young woman who carries her mother's beauty and her father's spirit. His son Benjamin has become a source of immense pride. And according to sources, Travolta is reportedly beginning to open his heart again, linked romantically to actress Kristen Davis, his co-star from the 2024 film Cash Out, with insiders saying his children wholeheartedly support the connection. Everyone has told him how Kelly would want him to meet someone new, a source revealed. Travolta remains active in Hollywood, continuing to take on film roles and honoring his legacy. The Jet Travolta Foundation continues its work, quietly and powerfully, changing lives in the name of a boy who deserved so much more time. John Travolta has lost a lover, a son, a wife, and a lifelong friend, all to the same cruel disease and the same brutal randomness of life. And yet, through every single devastating chapter, he has never stopped performing. He has never stopped loving. He has never stopped giving. That is not just resilience. That is something far rarer, far more powerful. That is courage. That is a man who looked into the darkest corners of existence and chose, every single time, to keep the light burning. What do you think about John Travolta's extraordinary and heartbreaking journey? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story moved you the way it moved us, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because we have so many more incredible stories just like this one waiting for you. As for John Travolta, the man, the legend, the survivor, his story is far from over, and we cannot wait to see what he does next.